The Tab P11 Pro Gen 2 is the sequel to the 2020 flagship tablet from Lenovo. The Gen 2 is a bit of a mixed bag, as it upgrades a few features over the previous model but then also leaves several others on the chopping board. For starters, the Gen 2 has a newer and faster MediaTek Kompanio 1300T chipset that replaces the previous Qualcomm Snapdragon 730G, a 120Hz display, and you can now configure the memory up to 8GB RAM and 256GB storage. On the other hand, the new model has plastic construction instead of aluminum, lacks the ultra-wide camera on the back and the fingerprint sensor, has a battery that's 400 mAh smaller, and a display that's also a tiny bit smaller with a slightly lower resolution. The Lenovo Tab P11 Pro Gen 2 has a relatively clean and pleasing design that is aesthetically similar to its predecessor. The front has a slim, uniform bezel all around the display with curved corners. The back has the two-tone finish, which is technically the same color but looks different due to the way both parts reflect light. However, even if they look similar, the Gen 2 model lacks the aluminum body of its predecessor, instead opting for plastic back and sides. We don't think this looks particularly worse, but it does feel less rigid overall. The back surface is also prone to highlighting fingerprints and smudges. The three physical buttons are in the same location as before, with the power button on the top right and the volume buttons near the top of the right edge. The power button lacks the fingerprint sensor found on the Gen 1 model, and in fact, there is no fingerprint sensor anywhere on the Gen 2, forcing you to use passcodes if you want to secure your device. Our model was configured with the 2-in-1 keyboard, which is a two-part accessory that includes the keyboard and a back cover. The keyboard attaches to the base of the tablet using magnets and connects using a physical connector, so it works even when Bluetooth is disabled. The keyboard has a ThinkPad-like design, with reasonably spacious keys that have a nice tactile feedback. Some of the keys on the side, such as the backspace key and the tab keys, are smaller than you'd expect, but it wasn't a major issue. The keyboard has a matte surface, which unfortunately gets smudged easily. Below the keyboard is the trackpad. The trackpad is a bit on the smaller side, but works really well, with good tracking and extensive gesture support that allows for a wide range of functionality being accessible through just swiping motions. The included back cover has a flap on the bottom that can be adjusted to angle the display to your preference. The hinge is sturdy and has about 140 degrees of motion, making it very flexible. There is another flap on top of the back cover, which opens up to reveal the stylus. While the keyboard accessory improves the typing experience on the tablet considerably, there are a few issues with it that mar the overall experience. Using the device on the lap isn't particularly comfortable unless you have very long legs that can accommodate the edge of the hinged flap on the back. Otherwise, there is a very real threat of the display just falling off and dragging the keyboard with it, something that cannot happen with a traditional laptop. Second, the keyboard attaches magnetically to the display when closed and does so quite aggressively. Opening the keyboard to access the display is often a chore, as there is not much of a lip to grab onto the pull and the keyboard clings on as if for dear life. A weaker magnet system, a longer lip to grab on top, or a tab near the edge to pull on are all good ideas that could have been implemented to make your life easier. The keyboard and the back cover have a soft touch outer surface that has a leather-like finish and generally feels pleasant to touch. The keyboard can be flipped behind the display, at which point it automatically gets disabled and the on-screen keyboard gets enabled. Unfortunately, neither the tablet nor the keyboard accessory are dust or water resistant, so make sure to take care of them. The Lenovo Tab P11 Pro Gen 2 has a 11.2-inch, 2560 by 1536 resolution, 120Hz OLED display. The display resolution is slightly lower than the 2560 by 1600 panel on the Gen 1 model, but the 120Hz refresh rate is new. The device also supports Dolby Vision and HDR10+ and DCI-P3 coverage. The Lenovo Tab P11 Pro Gen 2 runs on Android 12 out of the box. Lenovo has promised support up to Android 14, but we are yet to receive any info on when Android 13 would arrive. The review unit was also stuck on the July 2022 security patch, and no further updates were available at the time of writing. This does not leave us with a lot of confidence on timely future software updates from Lenovo. The Lenovo Tab P11 Pro Gen 2 comes with the new MediaTek Kompanio 1300T chipset, which includes a quad-core CPU and the Mali G77 MC9 GPU. The performance on our review unit with 8GB memory and 256GB storage was decent. Using the device as a productivity tablet was quite a good experience, as things like web browsing, emails, working on documents, image editing, and video conferencing were a breeze. Media consumption is another thing the device is good at, with great performance even while watching high-resolution 4K 60 frames per second HDR videos encoded in AV1. The Lenovo Tab P11 Pro Gen 2 is a very thin and light tablet with very nice display and speakers that makes it ideal for media consumption. The optional keyboard and pen also perform very well but can bump up the cost of the device considerably. The performance from the MediaTek Kompanio chipset is quite good. Lenovo's software experience is also very clean and user-friendly.